I know you've gotten some questions about the timeline of inflation, but let me just try again in this context. I think it bears repeating because now we have the numbers. Fed Chair Jerome Powell said that transitory is no longer the right way to describe inflation. He said it now appears that factors pushing inflation upward will linger well into next year. I asked Brian Deese this question yesterday, so let me put it to you today. Given what Jerome Powell is now saying, does the administration, does the president acknowledge that inflation is more entrenched and not transitory?
Well, Kristen, I would say that I can't speak obviously for Jerome Powell, but I think part of the point here is that it doesn't really matter what you call it. Our view, but more importantly, the view of the Federal Reserve, which he oversees, private sector forecasters in the markets, has been and remains, and has been for months, that inflation will ease over time. That is the projections of the Federal Reserve. That is the projections of outside forecasters, and that it will ease next year. And that our supply chain issues and higher prices are rooted in the pandemic, which will subside as it gets under control. So I can't parse for him his comments, but they make projections on a regular basis, on a predictable basis, which is important for the markets, important for people to look to, as do we, which I think is the most important thing to watch. They are predicting, as they have for months, which hasn't changed even when he made those comments, that it will subside next year.
I think when people hear the term well into next year, though, I interviewed a business owner today, some families who say it's this piling up of prices that's causing the suffering. What do you say to those families who are suffering and they hear a term like well into next year and they feel panicked?
I would say that we take the rise in prices and that impacts individual families, small businesses, anyone across this country incredibly seriously, Kristen. And that's why it's so important to note and to detail, as I did at the beginning, but I can highlight a little bit more, what the president is doing and what this administration is doing to lower prices. And that includes using every lever at our disposal to lower gas prices, something that's impacting people across this country. We've seen some progress. 20 states across the country, we've seen it go down. We expect that to increase. Another key driver in these inflation numbers is the price of cars. We're seeing wholesale car prices come down. That means when families go to a lot to buy a used car, first quarter of next year, the prices will be lower. And we're also using tools at the president's disposal to go after meat conglomerates, where we're seeing when people go to the grocery store and a pound of meat is more expensive than it should be. We agree. That's less related to supply chain issues. A lot of that's related to the actions these conglomerates are taking to take advantage of the American people and the industry. So what people should understand is that the president is focused on bringing down costs in all of these industries, how they're impacting their daily lives, which is what's most important to him, and that also getting the Build Back Better agenda and bill passed will help lower a range of costs that impact people's bottom lines, their pocketbooks, their budgets.
And obviously the child tax